midterm budget, and of course we're going now to cross to Siya Biniza, who is the director of the political economy Southern Africa from Pretoria studios. And Siya, good afternoon to you and welcome to our program. Firstly, some people have been cutting into this budget saying that it didn't deliver the deliverables. According to you, did the minister try?
Well, I think it's a very difficult job for the minister, but I think what he tried to do was deal with those people who have power and influence, particularly in terms of the credit rating agencies, in order to avoid a downgrade, which ultimately would have ended up hurting the financial sector and a lot of the people backing not only the ANC, but the political arena generally. And so this is why it's quite challenging that he wasn't able to deal with everyone's problems, but I think the minister has been strategic in focusing on key strategic problems that he's trying to avoid, one being a downgrade, the other one being a complete destruction of Eskom or a failed state-owned enterprise being Eskom. And so that's why a lot of the decisions are quite separating or dividing in terms of the sentiment. You're hearing a lot of people saying it wasn't enough. The ANC is quite adamant that it's keeping in line with the decisions that they made at the conference and that the minister is taking a step forward and implementing some of these policies. And so what I'm hearing or analyzing of the situation is that he's dealing with those with the political influence as a way to avoid catastrophe. And I hope that once the economy starts recovering, we will be able to deal with the dearth of social development gaps that still remain in order to be dealt with.
Well, one should be worried about how do you really fix the fiscal challenges, especially with debt levels of the country at 4.5 trillion rand, whereas we're not able to improve your revenue generation. Then how does this minister maneuver out of that?
Sure. Again, I think it is a bit challenging for the minister given the separation of power and the mandate that he has. As the finance minister, he hasn't got complete control over the business of the other state-owned enterprises and other entities that not only do not report to him but have their own mandates and powers. And so he can only control the budget. And I think what we've seen is that since the first term of former finance minister Pravin Gordhan, who was the one who set on the fiscal consolidation in terms of his freezes of certain government posts at certain levels, we haven't seen a lot of implementation of that throughout the number of years that we've been in fiscal consolidation. And I think what current Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is trying to do is to say, guys, I think we've reached that point where we can no longer postpone some of these decisions. And so that is why I think he's tying a lot of people's or a lot of ministers or agencies' hands behind their backs in order to implement the consolidation. My worry, though, is in the sort of wholesale approach driven primarily by the single objectives of fiscal sustainability. Yes, I think that is an important requirement to a certain level. However, the problems we're faced with at state-owned enterprises and the general malaise in terms of economic development in the country needs more concerted interventions at a micro level, but also much more coordination at a monetary and fiscal policy level in terms of macroeconomic management.
Well, see, I mean, there's a problem with regard to SOEs, and is there a tangible plan? I mean, for now, some are not really convinced in as far as SAA is concerned. When you look at the minister emphasizing that we are emphasizing people who are flying instead of people who are in trains, and of course, excusing the pun of the president once being stuck in a train before. But is there going to really be a slight movement to show that there's a step in the right direction to fix the quagmire that the SOEs are facing?
Sure. I think by and large, the state's experiments in terms of privatization, we can successfully say they've failed. If you look at the examples of SAA, which still relies heavily on government bailouts, but also if you look at perhaps the mixed performance of Telkom since the 1997 partial sale in terms of its assets, none of these interventions which were trying to correct fiscal challenges were able to deal with the problem. Now that we've got so-called equity partners, it goes to show, it'll depend in terms of, firstly, who are these equity partners? Are they local private sector? Can they create jobs in terms of at least privatizing part of the equity? But also, would they be able to deal with the challenges at Eskom, which are not only internal in terms of management, but also sector-wide challenges that not only affect South Africa, but even neighboring countries. If you look at the utilities of neighboring countries in Zambia, Mozambique, and a lot of state-owned energy utilities are facing the same kind of challenges that Eskom is facing. And so perhaps this might change things. However, just simply looking at it from a fiscal and a numbers and ratios perspective and suggesting interventions that get you your result without looking at the unintended consequences is not going to be enough in order to get us out of the problems that we're currently faced with.
Yeah, see, I'm with Owen Khumalo here, and of course, we want to understand now on the issue that we should be concerned about, the budget deficit. I mean, at 5.8% with the current economic problems that the country is having, how are we going to narrow it?
You see, that's the big worry for me, because we already short on the revenue collection side, and that's projected to even worsen in the next 2 to 3 years. And I think one important consideration which will worsen that gap is the funding for NHI. So NHI is coming on stream, so we need more billions to fund that initiative as well. So without broadening the tax base, and I think I keep coming to this point, I'm not sure how we're going to close that gap, because we can try and cut on other departments and try but where do we cut? We're already short on revenue collection, so it's a big challenge. So what the amount of expenditure we're facing in the short to medium term requires that we become creative in terms of how do we grow our revenue base. And yeah, for me, it's a worry, because they don't, maybe too pessimistic. We'll see what the finance minister brings to the table in February when he gives us the detail. Maybe we can get some direction there.
All right. Siya, I'll just take one word from you. Are you optimistic that when we meet in the next 3 months, we'll be singing a different tune in terms of having really come to terms with the reality of getting tangible solutions to the current fiscal problems that we have as a country?
Sure. Look, I think the state is getting into a new arena with its solutions based on public-private partnerships as a way to reduce what government is spending in terms of delivery of service and investment. However, I do want to raise a concern that unless we can actually structure the agreements such that they create some local jobs, there's levels of localization that create domestic demand in South Africa, we won't be able to deal with the problems. We might be able to save a failing SOE, but we won't deal with the challenge of unemployment or resuscitating economic growth without looking at it from that perspective.
Right. Siya Biniza is coming to us live from our Pretoria studios. He is the Director of Political Economy Southern Africa, and as well as the CEO of Weaver Investment, who is Mr. Owen Khumalo. And of course, there has been our analysis of the budget presented by Mr. Tito Mboweni today in Parliament. Stay with